if you're joining us, welcome to the transition session of our spring conference. So again, welcome to today's session on transition. My name is Denny Paul May, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Brenda Combs, and we're going to be talking to you and working you through a session on the indicator 13, and we're going to talk about transition, post-secondary transition, the transition coaching tool guiding questions. And this is going to be the framework for our meeting today. Our topic today is a compliance issue. It's indicator 13. It's post-secondary transition for high school students. We want you to consider the first question. What is post-secondary transition? Okay, so I want you to consider the first question as we look at balancing transition issues and transition items with good teaching. We want to take you through the engagement cycle today. So what you're going to be doing to complete this cycle is after you get your answer written on your sticky note, you're going to share with your elbow partner. So I would number the room. You're a 1 and you're a 2. You're a 1, 2, and you're a 1. So you guys are going to work in a triad over here. You guys will work as a duet. Now we want you to have a discussion. We want you to have a discussion, and we want you to respond to this question. What is post-secondary transition, and what does this mean to you? Okay, and so now you can start having a discussion with your neighbor. You can share with one another, and the idea here is in small groups, we want you talking to one another because you'll learn something from her and she'll learn something from you. Same thing in your classroom. As you're working with your kids, you may have mixed ability groups. You may have a group of 6, somebody that could read a little bit better, somebody that can do math a little better, somebody that maybe understands the resume, if we're working on a resume at the high school level. Whatever it is, the intention is for shared engagement is going to produce a better overall education for the group members. So we want you talking to one another right now and being prepared. And then at the end of this, after you share with one another, we want you to go back to your sticky note. We want you to rewrite your answer if you need to, have your discussions. So we're going to go to our participants now, and we are going to hear from this group over here, because I think I had, if I'm just working the room and I'm gathering data, I'm thinking 2 elementary, 1 high school, 2 high school. So I'm going to go here to start, and we'll work our way over, okay? All right, so who's going to speak? Introduce yourself.
I'm Libby Blair, and I work at Lecture Elementary. So it's basically just a process of preparing them after high school to enter the college or work.
Great answer, great answer. Anything else you guys want to add?
Like when you said, it's either workforce or college, like you're not forcing them to go to college or whatever, just whatever they want after high school.
And it's a very delicate situation, right, when you have these conversations, because our society is geared toward going to college, but we realize that when we work with students with disabilities that maybe there's executive function issues, maybe there's socialization, some of the intellectual disabilities come into play, and they need support. And so we have to know about all these things, right? So
Find what's best for the individual, because they might say, I've seen this, that's a big thing. Maybe that's really not true reality. Let's discuss what you could do and let's make a transition plan for something that's reachable.
Absolutely, and that's a very key piece. And I know Brenda's has a lot. She's done a lot of things, worn a lot of hats, and she had her students working. Did you not, Brenda? You want to go ahead and add something?
I did. When I was a teacher at the high school, I had all my students out working in different areas. And some of them did have unrealistic goals. So what we had to do is we had to sit down and we had to talk with them and say, well, why do you want to be a veterinarian? That was the very thing that one of them wanted to be. Well, they enjoyed, they liked wearing the white coats, and they were going through all of these things. And I said, well, what about working at the veterinary clinic, but maybe taking care of the animals, you're not giving them baths, taking them out walking, all those types of things. And it clicked, yes, so, then we changed the post-secondary goal and made it more realistic. While we were in school and while they had all these goals, and I kept a little check sheet, because sometimes, they like to change from one area to another, because as the group went out we could come back together and we would talk about the situations that they had at their job site. And then, of course, some of them was like interested in, wow, I'd like to do, they would do that kind of thing. So, we would do some changing around. But we were fortunate. I had my CDL, so I drove the bus. I took them there. My aide went with me. We were just all over the place. But they really, really got the feel of what they wanted to truly be by the time that they were juniors. That's because, they changed their minds. But we have to find out why they want to be a certain thing. Because yes, sometimes they do have this unrealistic goal. And we have to sit down and talk to them in a reasonable way to show them, maybe it's something else that you want to be. And we know that as teachers. But we have to be nice about that.
I love all those comments. Now, I would like to go back here, kind of out of order here just a second. Not really, though. Stephanie Kidd is going to share some of the things that we've gotten and some of the answers and responses from our folks in the Zoom session.
Yeah, so on Jamboard right now, we have post-secondary transition and real big students transition from high school to college or to a career. So, and then it talks about we need help with our students for becoming college and career ready. So they're concerned about that. And then post-secondary transition is transitioning a high school student to their next stage in life, whatever that stage may be. And that's true. It could be workforce, it could be assisted living, it could be college, whatever that next stage may be. So, and then post-secondary transition is preparing students to transition from high school to college or career.
Perfect. Great job. Thank you, Stephanie, for that. And we want to go back and forth all day because we want engagement for everyone. Now we're going to go to our crack staff over here, our high schoolers. Tell us what you have to say there. Introduce yourself, please. And I'll let you speak into the handy dandy mic.
Regina Parsons. I'm Floyd Central High School and also Virtual Academy.
Oh, good. And over here we have
Jenny Hicks, Floyd Central High School.
Okay. So tell us about your answer there.
I put what they want to do after high school and how they're going to get there. It's their road.
Very good. It's their road. So we're really being intentional about our planning process. We've got to make sure that our activities have outcomes and that we're really doing something with the kids, right? That we're preparing them. We're looking at their maybe looking at their barriers for instruction, maybe looking at the barriers for employment, and kind of attacking that. And I think one of the key pieces, going back to what you said about having that conversation, is really, it really helps us if we can develop a relationship with these students, that it goes beyond the classroom just a little bit in regards to trying to have those difficult conversations at the point where we need to say, hey, maybe you thought about being a vet, but maybe how about a vet tech? You see what I'm saying? The difference. So I'm going to turn it over to Brenda right now. And Brenda's going to talk to you a little bit about what Indicator 13 means.
What we're looking at in Indicator 13 is we're looking at what career path does the child want to be at. Their paths in there, and we give them transition assessments, which is your student surveys, your parent surveys, your ILP that starts in the 6th grade. So you have that already going for you by the time they get into the 8th grade. You did not know we had ILPs in the 6th grade? Okay. So we do, and they're supposed to complete so much every year. So you might want to check on that when you get back because you will have it from 6th to 12th grade or to exit. So just make sure you check on that. So while you're doing these assessments every year, you have to do a transition assessment once a year to make sure that you are updating your strengths, preferences, your hobbies for the child. We're looking at the child.
The survey start in 8th. Is that when they do that, or how does that work?
The ILP actually starts in 6th grade. Now in 8th grade, we do start with the surveys.
That's what I was thinking.
And we try to do one every year. I know sometimes with this virtual, we've had some issues, but you can even call them on the phone or even have breakout room or whatever and talk to the student about whatever transition assessment you want to work on. There's so many different ones, and we have them listed in your IEP. You know, you have to just check the box when you do those. But we need to make sure we do one of those every year. Then when they get 16, and of course, Denny, Paul, and I say, you know, once they get 15, you need to check, because if they're going to turn 16 in that IEP frame, you go ahead and start that post-secondary goal piece, so you don't have to have that extra meeting. Then we look at that and we have to write our post-secondary goal. We have a template that we use that is provided by KDE. We just have to follow along with that template. Now, the scary part is, in the past, we could go ahead and list the transition services. Now you have to click on the post-secondary goal and Infinite Campus to type up your services for each service. So you need to make sure you do that. If you do it all at one time, it's just going to show one item. It'll show all of them, but then next to it in Infinite Campus, it'll say one item. So, I mean, I don't think you'll get your hands slapped because you've got a whole lot of things listed there if you do it that way. At least they're listed. And that is one of the indicators that we need to make sure that's compliant. So we need to make sure that we have those transition services documented in that IEP. And remember, I know they have a drop-down box. You just click on it and you can go through there and pick out whatever you want. Make sure that you individualize that to that student and not have blanket ones for everybody, because they're going to be all in different areas. They're going to have their different disabilities, those types of things. So we need to make sure we have that as
And
well.
all that's driven by assessment.
Yes, it's all driven by
The
assessment.
key piece is assessment.
Mhm, that's right.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, you're fine.
Transition like in Infinite Campus, or is it just the transition link on the IEP? Or is there also another that you have to complete?
It's in the IEP.
Yeah, just, that's,
Mhm.
okay. I
It's
didn't
an
know if it was
Infinite
just
Campus
that,
IEP.
an additional, or,
Mm-mm.
No, it's
No.
built, it's built
Okay.
in. It's built into the document. And
It
it really becomes the
I've seen it.
focal
but
point.
I
Yeah.
didn't know if it-
So Brenda, if you don't care, just talk to them a little bit about how this is a federal indicator and how, what the real urgency is from a compliance standpoint.
Yes. Okay, so when you're looking at why do we need to have indicator 13, we all want what is best for our students. We do know that it comes from a national level. We're looking at Washington. They have their federal regulations. The states have their regulations. So it is a regulation. So if you're not doing indicator 13 and at the appropriate age, and you're audited, or, you know, you have to do photo reviews, we find that it's not compliant. The problem is we have areas 51 through A through 51I. If only one of those is a no, the whole thing is a no. So we have to make sure that you have each of those pieces that they ask for.
And our directors have to report on this every year, do they not?
They have to report on that every year, and then the state in turn has to report to OSEP, which is in
As
Washington.
to how Kentucky's doing. So when you talk about these things, it requires each state to submit a state performance plan to OSEP. And there's an annual report that each district has to provide. And it all goes into, are these 9 post-secondary requirements going to meet compliance? Now, when you break it down, if you look at the record review document, there's a couple of areas where it says, hey, these are areas that cannot be remedied. And what I mean by that is you can't fix it if you let it mess up. So the two things that we have that appear are if a timeline goes out, if an IEP goes dead, for lack of a better way of saying it, or if we have failed to get consent correctly and ahead of inviting an outside agency. Those are the two things you can't fix. Everything else, if you find that you've made a typo or you find that there's something technically wrong with any of the other 7 items, you can fix it, right, Brenda?
Right, you can fix
And the
those.
state intention is for you to fix it. If you see it, or if we come out and we review your file, the intention is to go ahead and fix it, because I'm telling you, the state wants to report to the feds that we're 100% compliant in Kentucky. Otherwise, they have to come in and look at us and look at what we're doing and our procedures, just like we come in and look and see and try to help you with your procedures. You see, so it all kind of works together, and it is a federal indicator. just like at the elementary level, if you're a special ed teacher, 60-day timeline. From the time you get consent to the time you actually put that IEP in place and implement, you got 60 school days, right? So that's a federal indicator as well. Preschool has a federal indicator. How do we have the IEP in place by the 3rd birthday? But today we're talking about transition. So that those 3 indicators have some real strong federal requirements with them. And that's why we train this, okay? So let's move on here. So right here is just a little bit about the regulation. You can see it kind of throws everything at you here. This is straight out of the law, okay? So this is rooted in law. It's rooted in state law. We talk about the Kentucky Administrative Regulations, or KARs. This is 1.320, and it says you have to have appropriate measurable goals, transition assessments related to training, education, employment, and if appropriate, independent living, and then transition services and special design instruction and related services that are going to be needed to help the student meet that, okay? So everything you do at the high school level with the IEP, the focal point becomes the post-secondary goal. So if you write an instructional annual goal that supports the post-secondary goal. If you do a transition activity, it supports the attainment of that goal. But anyway, that's enough about the law. And then this is a little bit about the life of an agency other than the LEA or state agency responsible for developing the IEP. Now, LEA means like Floyd County, okay? LEA means like Letcher County over here, okay? So we got some folks from Letcher, we got some folks from Floyd. And it is your local school districts, what they're referring to here. If an agency other than the LEA fails to provide the transition services described in the IEP, the LEA shall reconvene the ARC. So if you've got an outside agency that's supposed to be providing services for a student and they're not doing it, you can call an ARC meeting and kind of hold their feet to the fire on that, because those agencies get money to provide these students with, some of this additional support. Like Voc Rehab is the one that comes to mind right away. And they're supposed to be coming in and doing some assessment and providing things for students at the senior year, maybe starting in the junior year. So that whole inviting of the outside agency comes into play as the student gets to those ages, and we have to be real intentional, and we have to invite, and the districts, the spirit of the law is that the district is going to invite the outside agency once it becomes appropriate. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So I had just a couple of quotes up here. By failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. Benjamin Franklin, one of my favorite historical figures. And then this is Yogi Berra. Without a plan, even the most brilliant business can get lost. You need to have goals, create milestones, and have a strategy in place to set yourself up for success. So one of the things, self-advocacy is huge in transition. Okay, it's huge. Our students, we have to build some success for them, and we have to give them some services and give them some experiences that are going to build some confidence, that they can learn to advocate for themselves. Or we need to show them where the supports are if they can't advocate for themselves. So it's a big piece of what we do at the high school level. As those kids get into the 9th grade, it start getting real. And we start thinking about that hourglass, and we've only got so much time left with them, right? Now the focal point becomes, hey, can you take care of yourself? Can you be independent? Can you hold a job? Can you do some of these things? And if we're not doing what we need to be doing for these kids, then we're failing them. You see what I'm saying? So we really got to be intentional about thinking about getting a good plan in place, teaching them to set goals, and giving them the tools that are needed to achieve those goals, no matter where they clock in on the disability chart, okay? No matter what the deficiencies are, we got to find barriers. We got to find ways to circumvent those barriers. Brett was just talking about, Brett, if you want to kind of go through that, she was just mentioning 51.
51A through I, this is those components. So if you'll first see, the first component is your post-secondary goal, and that's the one I told you that the state already has the template. You just have to complete that template. And then we talked about B, transition services, and Denny Paul was talking about this just a second ago as well as I. but those play a very vital role because in those transition services, you can talk about teaching them strategies for advocating for themselves. Those types of things go in there. That's what would go in that transition service. C and D sort of goes together. The C part is inviting that outside agency, and then D is the consent for that outside agency. So before you send the notice of your ARC home, you have to send home the outside agency notice and get their consent so you can send that ARC notice out. And that is a must. If you send it later, it's not compliant. So that's one of those pieces that Denny Paul said, we can't remedy that. That's just one of those that we can't remedy. We can't go back and fix that part. So we have to make sure that we do that when you invite that and need to invite that outside agency.
How long is that consent? How long is that good for?
For 1 year. And you can only put one agency per form. So if you're going to want more than one agency to come, then you'd have to fill out separate forms.
Because what I usually do, I put mountain comp on there and then I put both rehab.
Okay, you have to have two separate, okay.
You got to have two different forms, and you got to do it. We got some guidance from OSEP in 2008, letter to grade. It's part of this presentation. Eventually we'll get to that, but since you asked the question, I think we need to go ahead and answer it. Each ARC meeting that you invite an outside agency for, you need to get consent from the parent to do so. It needs to be informed consent. They need to know what you're inviting, who you're inviting, and what the purpose of it is. Then when the student turns 18, if they become an emancipated youth and they are representing themselves in the meeting, you have to update that consent with them as well. And so for every meeting that you have where transition is a purpose, you have to get a separate consent each time.
So you're on track.
Get one blanket consent anymore. We used to try and get it at the 9th grade and it stayed in place the whole time. No longer is that true. Okay. We have to get one for each time. Okay. So that's kind of where we are now. I didn't mean to go ahead because you weren't finished.
That's okay. On 51E, that's your multi-year course of study. So we're looking at classes that these kids may need to take because of what they would like to be after they graduate. And we try to put those classes in there. Those include your vocational class as well if that child is going to be taking that track. Related annual goals, when you're looking at the annual goals, you have to mark a box underneath the goal. It'll ask you if it's going to be education training, if it's going to be employment, or if it's going to be independent living. So you have to mark the appropriate box for that. And you can only mark one box per goal unless you only have one goal. If you have one goal, you can mark both of those. And I would say all three, but if you have an independent living goal, you're going to have more than one goal. All right, so your annual related annual goals. So, we're looking at those goals that you are writing for the student. And we just talked about that. So transition assessments, those are the biggie pieces that we talked about earlier. And we really stress that those are so important. So make sure you get those every year. Student involvement is H. We want to make sure that these students are involved, because if they are involved, and it's good if you could get them at the 6th grade when you're starting that ILP, but we know sometimes that might be a little bit too young for some, but some that you can't. We do know a school district in our KVAC area that does start transition at the 6th grade. So and the earlier you get them in there, the more voice that they will have in an ARC meeting is what that is the intention of that. And then of course we have to update every year. We have to make sure that it is updated and it don't run out of timelines.
Okay, so Brenda keeps referring to the 6th grade. And I saw some perplexed looks. So what I want to say about that is state law says, and you can look it up in the KARs, that every student in the state of Kentucky has an individual learning plan by grade 6. Is that not? So that's what we're talking about. So that starts that planning process, that assessment process, building that learning profile, understanding how the student learns best, understanding what their preferences and interests are. You start that profile, and then that ILP helps inform that multi-year course of study. Okay, so the ILP is linked the rest of the time, and every time you update the ILP, you update the multi-year course of study, and you do that yearly. It's an annual thing. Okay, so the school, no matter what the situation, the school and the special ed department have to work together to let those things cross one another. Okay? Anything else here, Brenda? We're good? Good, okay. So, but you're gonna look at this template right here, and I want you to practice right now. I want you all to come up with just a goal, okay? I want you to do a post-secondary goal. So I want you to work on writing a goal, and then I want you to go on down there, and I want you to think, pair, share for that next activity. I want you to think about what do you think transition services should look like? What services do you guys use in your current transition planning? So we're going to work on A and B here. We're going to work on activity A. 51A is let's practice writing the post-secondary goal. By using this, you've got, notice there's a required training and education piece, and there's an employment piece. And if you've written IEPs before, there's drop-down boxes that help you get some language in there. And then the second piece of this, as we work through our engagement cycle, is that we're going to write on our sticky note the goal, and we're going to go to our Jamboard, put it up. And then the second part is we're going to talk about our services. Now you're thinking about having your
the
conversations with one another and creating your goal, and then thinking about your services.
Every single ARC.
All right, you guys go stand up there stand by your Jamboard. Stand by your in-person Jamboard. And we're going to start right here with our high school folks from Floyd Central. So just speak really loud in your teacher voice when you're calling, like you're calling somebody down, so I can hear what you got to say. All right. And more importantly, so they can hear you, what you got to say online.
Okay. So we have after graduating high school, Jay Phillips, extended community college to obtain a certificate in dental hygiene to become a dental hygienist where he plans to work at a local dental office.
Perfect. Did you hear all the components? Look up here. After high school, student's name, you're sending to Big Sandy, he's going to get a certificate. Because it says in that drop-down box, when you're looking on those items in Infinite Campus, it's where and how, right? So we want to be specific. And then I heard the specific job, right? Great job. All right, what about services? What about services?
We're going to provide multi-year courses study, provide opportunities for career and college fair and modifications for grade certificate.
Perfect. And did you hear say multi-year courses study first? That one's required. And we're going to go back here to our virtual. Do we have someone that wants to speak?
We've got two on here. One of them says the example goal will be upon graduation from high school, John will complete welding courses to obtain an entry-level welding certificate, and the services would be vocational school.
Okay.
And then the other one was after high school, John will enroll and take courses at Hazard Community College and Technical College to obtain employment in the field of diesel mechanics as a diesel mechanic.
Okay, as I listen to those, I hear just a little bit of tweaking that we might need. We might need to add some specificity to the employment piece and also the training piece.
Mhm.
In the training piece, I heard one that said, kind of left out what the student was going to get.
That was the first one.
What certificate are they going to get? Are they going to get on-the-job training? What are they going to do? What's the training specifically? And then I think it was in the first one, maybe it didn't include the job, the specific job.
It didn't.
So we want to stay away from those pitfalls, because when we're thinking about this, we don't want to leave out a specific job. We don't want to say things like retail setting or in the automotive industry. We want to say the student is going to get a specific job. If they're in the retail business, we're going to be a cashier. Okay, you see what I'm saying? So over here with my fine friends from Letcher that I've gotten to know so well today already. Huh?
Well, after graduating from high school, John will attend the University of Cumberland to take courses in accounting to obtain a business degree and become an employee at the CPA.
Did you hear all the pieces? It's after high school. You hear Johnny's name in there. You hear what Johnny's going to do when he goes to school. You hear what certificate he's going to get or what degree he's going to get. And then you hear that specific job. He's going to be a CPA, right? Perfect. Now, what services?
We got obviously your multi-year course of study,
Because it is required.
some job shadowing, a career fair, and help with a resume.
Perfect. All right, let's go back to our seats. Great job. Absolute great job. And now, as we go through this, we talk about Anita Archer a lot here, right? We talk about Anita Archer. So anytime we try to give examples, if we do exemplars, we give non-exemplars, okay? Or if we give examples, we give non-examples. That's a powerful piece in your teaching, okay? So make sure if you're giving a student an example of how to do this math problem, here's the way not to do it, okay? It really makes that learning concrete, all right? And it really solidifies and crystallizes in their mind what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. And it really helps them to make that clear. So here we've got, after high school, John Doe's goal is to attend a 4-year college. He's going to major in graphic communications and become a graphic artist. All right. Here, he's not going to any college. He's going to Toyota, get a job. He's going to get on the job training, and he's going to become an assembly technician. Remember I said, don't say automotive industry, say what he's going to do. And keep in mind, it's a goal, okay? It may not be exactly what he ends up doing, but we're putting him on a path, and we're providing the resources that are going to circumvent the barriers that come up in life. So next, I said, we got more post-secondary, and you can refer back to this, okay? You can refer back. If you need help with writing goals, you can refer back to our examples here. There's the independent living goals. And then this whole thing about, are these appropriate goals? You can see, we're just going to do one really quickly. After high school, Jody's goal is to improve job skills. We know from writing annual goals that improve is not measurable. Yes, post-secondary goals have to be measurable, right? They're going to improve job skills through a job training program to be able to work in a retail setting. See that retail setting? You see what's wrong with it now? See how powerful it is to see what's wrong with things sometimes in that context. So anytime you're working with your students, you're always going to give examples, non-examples. That's my Anita Archer-ism for today, okay? All right, so here's your screenshots, and you can refer back to this. Shows you how it goes in there. Notice what I was saying about when you have those drop-down boxes, it will show you, it'll say, right here, where and how. See, that's why you got to put that specific certificate they're going to get. What kind of training are they going to get? If they're going to the military, they're going to get on-the-job training in the military, and they're going to become an airplane mechanic, like my son-in-law, okay? That's a specific job, and that's the training they got, okay? So we've got examples for all those, and we can help you with any of that, and Brenda and I would be glad to do so. Also, I don't want to, Brenda, talk to them about independent living if you don't care.
Okay, so independent living, a lot of people feel like that only the low incidence students receive independent living. No, you have some low functioning MMD students that may need independent living. So you have to write an independent living goal for those students that need that area. And you would write it, it's a template, the same kind of template as before. It's going to be those skills that that they need to work on, and you'll be working with them in school. Some schools actually let the student go into the low incidence room for that specific skill, because as MMD, we're usually out in a regular classroom with our kids or whatever. So they let those kids go into that room for that specific skill. Is that legal? Yes, it is. Okay, because that's a skill that they need. So if they do need that, then make sure that you mark the box independent living as one of your goals that you're writing, actually a goal, and then remember it in your post-secondary goal. They will have to have both of them, and they're separate. You have to write the one for your education training, plus you have to do the independent living goal.
And keep in mind that the IEP has about 3 purposes as we move a student through elementary, middle, and high. Close gaps academically, but it also, our students have difficulties with function. They have lower scores in the Vineland. But it's very important to keep in mind that they may need support in this area. And if you've got documentation in your evaluation results that say they need support in socialization, or they need support with daily living, or if they need support with communication, you should be thinking about that, because it's not just for the low incidence populations that you would do this for, okay? So we're gonna move on here. Of course, this is what it looks like. We know that when we start on this, we're writing these goals for 16 years old and above. We suggest starting at 15 because kids turn 16 before the annual review's up. So make sure you know that. And this is what the nuts and bolts of the record review looks like. If I could give you any advice, if you're doing it on a daily basis out there, make yourself aware and proficient in the use of the record review document. Read it. If you have questions about it, let us know. But it just right here, it says, when we go review a file, we're looking to see, do you have a specific training and education piece? And do you have a specific required piece here? And then we might look at your eligibility and say, if they're low MMD, why aren't you doing independent living if you've marked NA, right? Why aren't you doing that? And then this next one, transition services needed to assist in post-secondary goals. This is a requirement of indicator 13. Okay?
And on 51A, we actually look at your present levels, and we look at that social and emotional piece there. And if you have something listed, you must have a goal for that. All cognitive MMD and FMD students must have an adaptive behavior goal.
Yes. So moving along, got some examples built in here for you. There's a laundry list of the services, and we need to move on to our next topic, which is agency involvement. Okay, on your guided questions, you've got work to do. You know the process, you're doing it on your own, then you're talking to one another, then you're sharing with one another, then you're going to the Jamboard. So for transition services likely to be provided for or paid for by another agency, the other agency is invited if appropriate. And then 51D, and we'll come back and look at this in just a second. 51D says if an agency was invited, prior written consent for the outside agency was signed by the parent, okay? And at 18, we updated it, all right? So you've got some work there to do. The question is, what do you know about outside agencies? Who are they? When do we invite them? How do we invite them? And then look at that ARC notice. What do we document in the conference summary? So those are the answers we're looking to, okay? So work through that and get ready to go to your Jamboard. Let's just talk about some things here. You've worked through the information a little bit rather than getting you all to call out. One thing I want to point out to you, when you invite an outside agency, it's important that you mark it here, okay? Either voc rehab or other, and you'd specify, if it's Big Sandy, you'd put Big Sandy there, right? Up at the top, there's a date. That's the date that's generated when you generate the ARC notice. When you go in there and actually type it in, we're saying, oops, that thing's sensitive. We're saying the date on your consent needs to be 1 day less than that date, okay? So you don't do it on the same day that you get to do the meeting. What you're violating, if you let someone on the outside know that a student exists at Podunk High School, if you let someone on the outside, that agency doesn't have the right to know that unless the parent says it's okay. So we're saying do it at least 1 day. So if that date is April 14th, your consent date is going to be April 13th on your consent to invite the outside agency.
Or
It's a
before.
separate form. Or before. But at least 1 day. At least 1 day before, okay? So, and then remember, you got to update it, all right? Remember that you have to update it, okay? So there's the letter to Gray. There's the information, the guidance on getting the consent for every ARC meeting when you invite the outside agency. If you don't invite the outside agency, there's a place to mark on there, not appropriate at this time. And if you do that, just put a little blurb in your conference summary that says why it's not appropriate right now to invite the outside agency. Remember, the spirit of the law is that the LEA invite the outside agencies so that the linkages can occur and so that the student knows about what's out there, okay? They have a right to know that, and we give them money to do that, right? The federal government gives these outside agencies money to do that. So if you're not going to invite them, let's say they're age 16, and you decide it's not appropriate right now because voc rehab is not going to come for this meeting. We're not going to really get that deep in. We're more focused on instruction, or whatever. But just get a list of reason or two as to why you're not inviting them, okay? And then,
I have a question. If we're doing like a behavior ARC, and they're not up to like that annual review, and I mean, it just doesn't involve voc rehab.
you don't have to invite them.
Right, okay.
Yes, you don't have to invite them in that situation. And in some instances, if it's a 24-hour violation of the student code, you wouldn't even have to mark a purpose unless you're changing the placement. If you're going to change the placement, then you would have to mark transition. Okay. If you're going to change anything on that IEP, you're always going to have to invite. Okay. So moving on, there's that whole talk about prior consent. And there's what the form looks like. And down here's the date. Remember, that day is going to be 1 day less than the generation of your notice each time you do it. And so many times when Brenda and I go out and review files, here will be the ARC date will be the same. The day you did the IEP will be the same day as is down right here. And if it is, you violated FERPA, the Family Education Right to Privacy Act. Okay. So very, very careful on that, because remember, it's a non-remedied effect. You can't fix it if you mess it up. And if you have 2 of those in your district, it's an automatic cap, right? And we don't want caps if we can help it. All right, multi-year course of study. As a transition service, the student has a multi-year course of study. Okay, we're going to move right on through these. Student, they have to have multi-year course of study. So in your mind's eye, the drop that, what was you going to say, Brenda? Discussion. You got to have discussion in the conference summary. So we look to see, did you make a blurb in your conference summary that says the multi-year course study is based on the updated transition assessments and the ILP in alignment? The ILP is in alignment. It says the student's multi-year course study must be in alignment with the student's individual learning plan. Right? Discussion of the review of that student's multi-year course study must be documented in conference summary. If we go to the conference summary and it's not written there, it's an automatic non-compliance. Those bullets and this language is straight out of the law, and it's also straight off of the record review document. Okay. So going on through, we got the multi-year course study tape. That's what it kind of looks like. As a transition service, you see transition service, multi-year course study. You start it current year to year of exit, expected year of exit. Okay. The student's multi-year course study must be in alignment with the ILP. That's why you have to have that language in your conference summary. And a discussion of the multi-year course study must be there. That's what it looks like, right? All right, 51F, related annual goals. And Brenda's already talked about this. Your annual goals have to be linked to your post-secondary goal. It's done by checkbox. It looks like this. You see it? Now, if we had time, I wouldn't be having you sit and get, right? We would go through this whole process, this engagement cycle. So I want you to take that more than anything. I want you to take that back to your classroom. Put them in small groups, put the work in their hands, make them respond. High levels of response is what moves the needle. High levels of practice and feedback moves the needle for kids. Okay? So make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing for kids. And we want you to take that away more than we want you to take this content away, because we can help you with the content. If kids LD and they'll have one goal, or kids ADHD and they'll have one goal, OHI, you can mark both boxes. But if you have more than one goal, you split it. Okay, so you'd mark one for one, one for the other, and there's also independent living. Don't forget about that. I have this question all the time. Do we have to write a transition goal into our annual goal? No, we have to think about our annual goals supporting our post-secondary goal and provide the transition services that are measurable and that have outcomes so that we can actually say we've done something with the kid, right? So there's the bullets on education, training, and employment must be checked, independent living when appropriate. And it talks about the one goal and the 2 goals. And if independent living is appropriate, goal must be included. Okay, so that's 51F. Now we're up to 51G. Measurable post-secondary goals are based on age-appropriate transition assessments. Now, let's go ahead and talk about 51G and 51H is you have to invite the student. All right, beginning at age 13, we start inviting the students. Now, keep in mind, if that student's 13 and in grade 8, you have to do it. You're responsible for that stuff. So go ahead and think about it, 13 and 15, who we need to be inviting to meetings, right? And then when we're talking about measurable post-secondary goals, transition assessments, we need to be doing at least one transition assessment. We need to be angling it toward instruction or employment, and we need to list those results in our present levels, okay? So when we write about that, and then in our conference summary, we need to say, the ILP is in line with the post-secondary goal and the multi-year course of study. And the post-secondary goal has been updated and remains appropriate. Or we've got new assessment information. We've got new information. The kid's not matriculating. The kid's not passing the classes. Maybe it looked like in the beginning he was going to be able to be this particular thing, but now we're going to guide him in a different direction. So when we get that new assessment information, we have to change the post-secondary goal. If we keep the goal the same from year to year, we have to have support as to why we do that. That's updating the post-secondary goal. Everybody understand? So that's why I kind of put these two together. So you look from assessment to a practice, a model for teachers. We conduct transition assessments. We consider present levels, and we put that anecdotal information. We put the results of the surveys. We put information in that present level. And we also got linked to this presentation an exemplar present level for transition, okay? Have you seen it? No? Yes? Okay. So we write the post-secondary goal, we identify the effective predictors and practices, the services we're going to provide, and we write the IEP goals, and we develop and analyze and collect data. So this is a model based on some work that we looked at teaching exceptional children, and we want to just put that in there for you. But the key is to know that you're not going to have a compliant IEP if you don't have current transition assessments in your present levels and you've not based the updating of your goal, your post-secondary goal, on that new assessment information. It's going to tell you keep it the same or change it. And you're going to have reasons why. When you're doing conference summary, propose, evidence, decision. Okay? That's an acronym PED that we use here at KVEC. We propose that the student's goal is going to be updated. The evidence is the assessment information. And the decision then is either to keep the goal the same or to change the goal. Okay? All right, moving on. Here's a laundry list of transition assessments. There's what it looks like in your record review document. Student involvement, we have to invite the student. We have to indicate it on the ARC notice. And that's where we would do it, okay? And that brings us pretty close to the end of what we're talking about. We always annually update that post-secondary goal, okay? And we got to have information in our conference summary saying that we're doing that, all right? The rest of the slides are screenshots, and this goes into the process that we talked about, non-remedy and remedy. So the information is there if you want to read that. I appreciate your attention today. Brenda, do you have any parting comments?
No parting comments, but I really enjoyed your involvement and your engagement.
Thank you so much for being so involved and so willing to work with us today, okay? Thank you for being here. If you have questions about transition, anything that you need to know, email Brenda. No,
Either one of us is fine. We don't care.
and I also had this little process, but notice it all comes down to, if you can see this down at the bottom, appropriate assessment makes it all go. Okay? Thank you all. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you a little later.